have CyberShredder and I Make Many Mistakes here. Game 1 of their rematch from last year's final. Into a bishop symmetry line with queen h6 main line, queen e5 drop, back this rook e6 deviation from the main line. And it looks like all preparation, or at least theory, so far. CyberShredder with the white pieces, since I make many mistakes. Honestly, white's position is a little bit stronger, at least to the 7th rank. But black has the material advantage currently. But white's diagonal will play key here if this is going to end up in a draw. King c5 played by black. White's idea is maybe just immediate king h6. Maybe pin with knight to g7 first, because the rook and the knight will coordinate onto the 8th rank. And there is no diagonal here, so there is no troubles. King g6 is fine first. I guess there really is no reason to play king h6. King g6. Apologize for any background noises. There's currently yard work going on outside my apartment complex. Alright, rook to b8. And rook g7. The knight and the rook coordinate for this one. Issues, you can't just allow king to g7, otherwise the queen will come up. And if you do just play something, even if queen a8 was available, if the bishop wasn't here, then knight will just h6 and g8. And it looks too slow for black to draw, as they have nothing to come on this side of the king. And if trades, then it's even worse, because you're just allowing the knight to come to g8. Looks like it's won for CyberShredder in game 1. I Make Many Mistakes is down on time as well, but yes, this just doesn't work. There is no queen h3 even. Black resigns, and CyberShredder will take game 1 of the series. Fix this around. The score is 1-0 in CyberShredder's favor. King h3 line, and CyberShredder deviates with the bishop to c6 instead of the bishop to d5. Very similar to mainline, just the bishop's in a different place. Honestly, if you play the theoretical draw line, it's the same exact moves, just the bishop is on c6 now. Obviously, you don't have bishop takes g8 in that line, though. Alright. Interesting moves. And like that looks like theory. Rook to b7 looks alright for black. Queen h4 seems fine. Not too familiar with this line. But I mean, at some point, 94 is not available now for white. I assume if there is an advance to e6, then maybe knight f5. The issue is that as white goes farther and farther left, their major pieces are less connected. And it's oftentimes why black can manage to string together a draw, because they're able to stop the rook to g8 or rook to g7 moves, because then they'd just be a major piece down. Maybe we'll see bishop b2 here, eventually for black as well. It's going to be interesting crossing this fourth rank for black, unless they just play king e3 rook b4, something like that, because the bishop stops this diagonal. Knight's not going to get involved in time. Well, I guess there is knight to d3, hitting the rook. But at that point, the queen needs to be protected, so. Obviously, this move is a huge threat, but that just defeats the purpose of playing c6 instead of d5. Would be a tempo down. In fact, I'm not too particularly sure why c6 is played instead of d5 in the line that they specifically chose. So king b3 and knight takes f1. Okay, it's a logical move here for white to open up the rooks. I assume that bishop takes on g2 isn't actually a bad move at this point with rook takes g2 to follow. Or maybe an immediate king to e6, to be honest. Issue with that is queen to g7 maybe. So rook takes g2 first, but now you have queen a6. I don't think knight takes f1 should have been played immediately. I believe king to e6 first, or at least king advancing. G6 probably would have been fine too. Oh, wow. Rook takes, and then the knight takes, allowing king to e6 with bishop a3. Obviously, the rook's not going to get involved, but you can't just lose a major piece as white here. Rook takes f2, probably with the idea of rook f7. This rook's still stuck, but yes, queen to g7 now, as that there's no one guarding the g file. And this looks slightly better for black, in my opinion, even though the difference of the king's ranks is just that these two major pieces and these knights are still in the first rank. Yeah, this knight can't develop except to maybe e3. Not even currently, because then that allows the rook to get out. This knight can't. Otherwise this rook is stuck on the f file. So queen to g4 played to get the queen just to slide to h7. You can't come to h3 and just repeat because the king is already on b3. And that doesn't seem like a possible move. But rook to f5 is played. CyberShredder is low on time, so maybe this will play in IMakeManyMistakes' favor. Rook to c1 getting the rook out, and this might be a little bit easier for CyberShredder now. But now the knight can come forward. Both knights can actually, if you like. Issues, you do have this bishop to b4 move, and the rooks and the queen are still in 7th rank, and you have no current idea of how to escape. Keeping the knight involved. I don't know if he's going to go f8 or e7 as the plan. So knight to d5 now, forking, but the rook will slide over, take the bishop, the rook will slide down. Queen to g5 seems logical, probably going to queen to e7 after, and I think IMakeManyMistakes might actually have this now, because the rook has to slide back up. If the rook was on the other side, it would be a different story, but with the major pieces the way they are, it seems like CyberShredder cannot find a way to advance. Oh no, rook to f7, then there's queen to g8. Okay. But can't take that now. Maybe just slide the queen to f7? Will this work out? I don't think it does. Because if here can't come here, but you do have here, and after it advances, the queen will just come to h8. And then knight to c6, king to b7, and the knight can't even come here. So CyberShredder takes game 2. I think after a simple miscalculation by IMakeManyMistakes, he had the time there to figure that out too. CyberShredder goes up 2-0, has the white pieces in game 3. Bishop d4 and king b3 for IMakeManyMistakes. Curious what lines will be played here. CyberShredder avoiding his king g3 against IMakeManyMistakes, as that is commonly drawn between them. But honestly, after he gets a sizable lead, he might be able to just play draws as white. Alright, king to d5, queen h6. Going into what typically was the standard line for king symmetry with bishop to d4 played and then king to d5. So unpins the bishop, but this is all standard stuff. I believe this is quite simple draw. I don't believe queen g7 is the typical move here. If I remember correctly, it is just queen to f6. Here I believe that it is still drawn, but black obviously has a much easier red carpet to follow because of the bishop still here. But knight takes c2 is still a threat. I don't know if bishop e4 can be played. And then you have king c6, king b7. Well, king c6, probably king c7 with rook to b8 as the idea. Pretty straightforward for black. White also got pretty straightforward. You just eliminate this bishop and then you advance. So I'm sure that it is drawn, but how is the real question? So if just king to c6 immediately, or king to d6, after knight takes c2, king comes here, king advances, rook to b8, king to h7, rook slides over to c6, or c8, my bad, and then the king will come to h8 and b8. That's obviously the most straightforward draw. IMakeManyMistakes offers it. But will CyberShredder accept it? King to h6 first. I mean, this gives IMakeManyMistakes to complicate the position with knight to bishop g4. But no, still going for the draw, allows knight takes c2 still. I don't know if these are blunders and black has a way to win with bishop d4, but it is peculiar. Because the thing with bishop g4, though, is that sure, there is knight to g3, or even a rook to g6. But is there a way to slow down black? Or slow down white? Alright, knight takes c2 just played the simplest way out of that. So we're probably just going to see rook b8. Oh, wow. I forgot about this move here. It's a little sneaky move. But the idea is that after rook b8, now your rook is not on a comfortable square. I believe queen to h8 is typically what tries to salvage this here, but usually you want your king on g6. And that's the difference. Wow, I'm surprised I missed that move. But IMakeManyMistakes. Yeah, very simple move there to. Yeah, Cyber should know that line as well, since he decided to play that in this one. Yeah, I can't believe he didn't see that either. Alright, same line as game 2 here. The king h3 line with the bishop c6 and the queen h4. Very odd deviation. Knight takes f1 after king b3 was the last moves played, but I make many mistakes. Proceed to lose in what I believe was a winning endgame for him. Maybe he'll play the same exact line, but I honestly think he should just play king e6 first. But will CyberShredder just immediately play bishop takes g2 here then? Because the issue with king b3 also is that it does unpin this bishop, but it takes f2 seems a little unnecessary immediately. Honestly, I just play king e6 here, like I've been saying, because you do have knight f5 to follow, and your knight's actually productive when it advances, as it has a dual purpose of guarding g7 and coming to e7. Knight c2, well, while it attacks the queen, a knight move just unpins it, and for example, knight to e4, it seems like a potential way to unpin it. But now there is no pins ideas there. Knight still keeps an eye on the queen. Rook takes f2. Now I make many mistakes is not losing the major pieces, playing a bit materialistic here. Queen a7, keeping an eye on the rook on f2. And I guess the rook on g1 as it's no longer defended by a knight. Maybe just king f6 immediately with ideas of eventually playing rook f5. Or will I make many mistakes just take on f1? I think both are valid ideas. Rook dropping to b4 probably isn't an idea yet. This isn't an idea either. Knight takes f1. Is he planning to come to 93 after this? But it doesn't work because your rook's hanging. Bishop b2. Probably the idea is bishop gd4 because the knight cannot take because of no check rule. Blocks off the queen's hold. Rook g6 is played. Probably the idea of taking a free bishop. Bishop d4 is still a valid idea. With the idea of after takes, you can take here while hitting the queen. And keep in mind that both of white's knights would be hanging in that line. Instead bishop e8, just keeping an eye on the rook. Maybe rook f4 now? And maybe a rook sacrifice. Bishop d4 after. Or rook f4 seems fine. Or maybe the idea is then rook to b6. Double attacking the rook. The rook has no good squares on the 6th rank. So yeah, I guess rook g4 is a valid process. Just denying this bishop d4 at this point. Knight on c2 is a little bit annoying right now because keeping an eye on b4. Just rook e2 very quickly for my make many mistakes, but this can't happen because of a pin. Unless he intends to pin his own rook. Yeah, where's your rook gonna go? It's not happy on the E file, so goes to H2. And now material is no longer equal. These bishops for CyberShredder are very dominant right now on the board. I think I make many mistakes still. Once again, needed to move to the 6th rank earlier. And wow, what a move. Bishop h3, pinning the rook. Can't be taken because of no check rule. You probably can't stay there as it will be lost if advanced, but then maybe that comes to an equal position. Right, I make many mistakes is down on the clock, and CyberShredder is simply just playing very aggressively here, putting pressure on I make many mistakes pieces. Probably a good response since he saw that I make many mistakes was playing materialistic. Right, keeping the knight. Honestly, maybe here would have been fine. Wow. Do you just advance or do you take? I mean, look at White's major pieces. They're all stuck in the bottom quadrant of the board. And yeah, wow, you're going to force the king back. Now you have a higher king. Even if you take the bishop and you have a material advantage, it's winning for black. CyberShredder will take game 4. Score is now 3-1 in CyberShredder's favor. Alright, CyberShredder now playing king to g3 and probably just going for a draw line at this point. e4 after knight takes h1. 3, all standard stuff. Are we going to see queen to a6 or king to c4? We see king to c4. Multiple ways to draw this line. Keys in this line are that the knight's pinned, so you hang onto your bishop, and once the rook, once the rook goes up, you have the queen coming to h8 if you need it. So the bishop can swing to h6, or the queen can swing to a8. You got this g7 square covered regardless. Knight g3 is also eventually an option. So queen e5. I assume this is preparation. I'm not familiar with this move at this point in the line. But the queen seems to be on a comfortable square. Bishop still able to be activated. Rook to g8 is not much of a threat at this point. Rook 1 to g6, common theme in this line should be played. Stops bishop h6 if it's an idea, and knight f6 if it's an idea. Not sure how he plans to get this rook involved quite yet, but maybe it's just there to support the b8 rook and intend to mainly be a rook in queen versus 2 rooks type of endgame, with the minor pieces battling out for control of the board. Maybe knight g3 and knight h5 is an idea, or even knight f5. Just attacking this rook here, giving it some trouble. Really, bishop h6 is played now. I don't understand the idea behind it after rook takes h6. Unless he really calculated out that line and sees that once you advance and get the rook involved, that white will just be a move behind, which is not something I spent my time calculating. Yeah, let's see if just after this takes. Rook comes here, rook's not safe, so the rook has to either come back, which is probably the best option. Then you have here, after takes, this is not an option. So maybe after it comes back, you just slide the rook over. When the rook advances, you just advance. And yeah, that seems fine because there's nothing to stop there. But an immediate rook to g8 could spell some trouble here. As h8 is covered. And if you remove queen from the e-file, then you're not going to be able to stop rook to e8. So the queen has to stay here. Can't come to h8. And now that the bishop doesn't stop here, is that you can't play knight to f6. Otherwise, this is just a move. Okay, rook 1 b6 played, but you do have just rook to f8. And what's the move after? Is it here? Then what happens after here? I don't see how black has a way out of this. I think CyberShredder is going to take game 5 here. Okay, and it does happen 4-1 in CyberShredder's favor. Not 5-1, 4-1. Alright. King h3 line, but now with this knight to d3 move, this is something that I was discovering the other time. But it was actually after knight to g3, and the bishop comes here. It's interesting that IMakeManyMistakes prepared King h3 for this match. At that with 3 different lines, or just 2 so far. 2 different lines so far. I wonder if he has any other opening choice picked out. If not, then this King h3 thing might be his only way to go. And I don't know if it's enough to get back in the series, as he has been playing it too particularly well. Just King b3 plate, allowing a very strong double diagonal. Maybe knight to g3, kicking it back to d5. And white also has a very strong double diagonal. Maybe bishop to d3 after the bishop gets kicked back. And white will be lower on ranks here, but will have a major piece advantage if they can develop it. This is eventually an idea. You have king to g4 at some point. Deciding to c1 to develop probably to c6. Although you can break the double diagonal of white if you play that immediately. So instead of rook to c1 you play here. Because I don't think the idea ever was to play bishop takes b1. Knight f3 is an interesting move. So it hits this rook while denying this trade, but the king just advances, and they're going to take the double diagonal. You still have a strong double diagonal to deal with, though. Granted, takes. You are putting a lot of pressure on your own diagonal there. And you do have knight e4 with knight to f6 to follow. It's not so clear cut, this position. Very, what's the word to describe it? I guess a very wild position. Rook to c6 is now played. After knight takes. Advancing, yeah, it wouldn't work because the rook to c7. Black finds a rather easy way out of it. But once again, is this the idea? After here, takes though. Doesn't seem working for white. Maybe rook to g6 first. Wow, CyberShredder really low on time here. Ooh. Interesting. Because if it takes, then maybe you just take the queen, or you just leave it there to allow that diagonal after you take the rook back. It's an interesting move. It also attacks the bishop on d3. Not really the knight here. Just opts to take, and then take the queen. But now do you have knight to f6? No. Yeah, the rook had to come back and defend this bishop. Oh, I just noticed something. If the queen takes here, though, and the rook takes back, I guess the rook to g6. But now, if you don't move your bishop, if the queen takes and the rook takes, once the king advances to b6, you have no way to stop the king. Because you literally have no moves to get your rook to the 8th rank in time. Wow. And I guess IMakeManyMistakes missed that. And CyberShredder will take game 6, and the score will be 5-1. And king g3 with knight takes f2, king f4, takes h1, king 5, knight takes h2, king b3. So this line again, rook to g7, and are we going to see king to c4 again? No, meaning queen to a8. I know this line technically works, but it's not favorable for most. And yeah, king to e6. I believe the way this one actually works is that you play king to e7. Can't remember. Alright, rook to b8. Rook's gonna work on g6 first, just stop bishop h6 once more, and knight f6 if that's ever an idea. Bishop h6, you're gonna take and advance this time. I mean, in this line, it actually makes sense. I wonder if he originally meant to play this line, and then it would work out. And he just mixed up his lines in preparation. Because maybe rook to b6 now works. Because if you just play rook to g8, then you can take with the rook. And if they take, you take, and it doesn't work, unfortunately. Well, that concludes the series between CyberShredder and IMakeManyMistakes, an underwhelming rematch of last year's final. Score 6-1. CyberShredder pretty much swept that series. I wonder if they played longer, would IMakeManyMistakes been able to come back? Either way, I don't think that either player needed to win this one necessarily. Both players go on to play QueenEatingDragon, which they have relatively good scores against. And the loser would go down to the lower bracket and eventually have Huang Yang as their matchup for the final candidate spot. Which he is a newer player, so they don't have a particularly long record against, at least long record where he's at the strength that he's at. So IMakeManyMistakes will go down that path. CyberShredder will go on to face QueenEatingDragon, which was the original way the bracket was set up anyway, before there was a ban. I guess we can go ahead and take a look at the challenge bracket, see the specifics behind that. Alright. So, yes, CyberShredder and QueenEatingDragon. What does IMakeManyMistakes path look like? He has to play Luca, and then the winner of. I'm surprised that match hasn't been played, but between those two, Gleb Momo and Jiraxis have been underwhelming in this tournament. So I don't think that's going to be too much trouble for Natsu, but who knows, we might see a surprise. Either way, IMakeManyMistakes will likely play Natsu and then Hong, and that will be the situation there. Loser of CyberShredder and QueenEatingDragon will come here and likely play Avi. Between FS and Idis, FS will likely win. FS and Babosos, and then Babosos and Avi obviously have already been played. Babosos was eliminated, and so was Manchester City, so they won't be going forward. FS will have to beat both, well, all three of these opponents to get a chance at Avi and a chance at the candidates, which would be a surprise, but we will see how that proceeds forward. Romaniac still remains as the only player to have reached the candidates, and we are still catching up to what's supposed to be. I believe the candidates was already supposed to start by now, with expected delays even. So we will see how this continues going forward.